If you're in the UK, good evening. If you're in the US or Canada, good afternoon. Or if you're in Australia or Japan, good morning. On today's show, I speak to 1PW ring announcer Stevie Aaron. This guy's been absolutely everywhere. He's author for Inside the Ropes. I mean, they've got so much to get through, but in turn, let's play the intro, shall we? I'm sorry, did I see a smug look there when I was like bigging you up a little bit?
No, it was great. It was perfect.
Not a problem, not a problem. It's, of course, Saturday night again. It's time for the magic of wrestling. I've got a very special guest. This guy is a ring announcer. He's an author for Inside the Ropes. Is there anything else I've missed?
I don't know, ex-commentator, I suppose. Manager, here and there. Wrestler. We'll get onto that.
Oh, I did not know that. Wow. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Stevie, how's your week been, my friend?
It's been good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Just like usual work stuff, nothing exciting. Been up to anything exciting this week?
This week, nothing off the top of my head, but I'm just thinking about the past right now after we've spoken. This should be a very therapeutic session for me, so I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what people are going to get out of it, if anything, but if you get something out of it, let me know, and it's appreciated.
Of course. So yeah, obviously I've got loads of stuff to get through. We've got announcing, we've got 1PW, which obviously we'll get into Inside the Ropes, which I'm excited for. So yeah, let's get started, shall we? So as I mentioned in the intro, you of course the ring announcer. So how did this all begin? I'm kind of excited to learn about this.
Well, this could be a deep dive, Liam. We could be here for a number of hours, but I don't intend to be. So I'll try and make it as interesting as I possibly can and try to cut out some of the fat. Whether I manage to do that or not, I don't know. But really, starting from the beginning, we need to go back about 20 years, which I can't believe it's been that long. But I need to go a little bit further than that at first, just to give you a bit of insight and just sort of set the scene, because I think this is why I asked you the other day how old you were, and I think it scares me because I had a conversation with somebody not that long ago, a grown adult who cannot remember a time, and we've all met people like this, and you might even be watching. They cannot remember a time when there was no internet, and that scares me. And I don't know about yourself, Liam, but it's just the fact that the world seemed to be such a much bigger place before the internet. So if we go back to the 90s, first of all, because I think it's important to remember that there was no social media. Very few people had the internet. I was lucky to get on mid-90s due to college and due to a friend and stuff like that. But my point is, the British wrestling was pretty much dead as far as I was concerned as a fan. It was just non-existent. Now, that's not to say that there weren't places that were doing well. Obviously, you had All Star, Butlins, and I used to read about like Hammerlock in Kent, which might as well be on the moon. This is what I mean about the world being such a big place. If you wanted to be involved with pro wrestling, I have no idea how you got involved with pro wrestling. It was pretty much a case of it was who you knew back then. Okay. And, I don't believe anyone advertised online. If they did, by all means, correct me. But the world was a very different place, and the UK scene was a very different place. As I say, I'm sure there was places that were doing well, but in the mainstream, it just, it was, if it wasn't forgotten about, it was the kind of thing you spoke to taxi drivers about, and they said, oh, you watch wrestling, and it's like, oh, that's that American rubbish that you'll watch. It's not like, what we used to watch on TV and stuff. So my point is, there was, it felt like British wrestling was over. It was dead. There was no way to be involved with it. Not that I wanted to be involved with it, but what happened at the end of the 90s, and I promise you this is relevant, through a friend of a friend of a friend, pretty much, and I think I've got that right. I was good friends, just to give you a bit of background, with a chap by the name of Mike Groom, who I went to school with, and we were both big wrestling fans, and again, his friend of a friend found out that we were big wrestling fans, and we got tips from all over the world, thanks to people like Rob Butcher, who would advertise in Power Slam magazine. We got in with him, and he was like bigging up events that were taking place in the Middlesbrough Town Hall, which was cool. Before I get onto that, I just want to mention the other reason why British wrestling was dead, I thought, was because there was a lot of these tribute shows, these WF tribute shows. Now, for people unfamiliar with them, they were basically claiming to be, as far as I was concerned, I know people can say, oh, it was a tribute or whatever, but they were basically misguiding the public because kids thought that they were going to see The Undertaker and Steve Austin. I actually had a friend who took her kids, and I remember the story because she was like, they were just sat there in disgust, just going, that's not The Undertaker, that's not The Undertaker. And it wasn't that long ago, I actually spoke to, and I won't say who it was, actually a British wrestling great. It was actually two people that said this to me, that they missed that era in some ways because the crowds were so big and stuff, and they loved, doing what they were doing, and they were impersonating the Americans. But for me as a fan, it was cheap and nasty. And it was like, yeah, you got them big crowds, but how many of those people, didn't go back when they found out it wasn't the people that they were expecting to see? So back onto my point, these shows started happening at Middlesbrough Town Hall, and it was part of, I believe it was McGregor's promotions. And they were advertising the WF Superstars Tour. Now, this was the real deal, and they put up good shows. So what they meant by that is they had ex-WF guys there, like Marty Jannetty. I remember meeting Marty. The Bushwhackers were there. Skinner, Steve Kern. I missed the one where Earthquake was there. That would have been great. And I did have tickets for the event where Yokozuna was supposed to be there, but he sadly died on that tour. But my point is, there was some really great British wrestling on the undercard and stuff. That's the first time I seen Robbie Brookside. First time I met Robbie Brookside, and I remember speaking to him after an event, and we were just saying how appreciative we were of like the actual mat wrestling and the technical wrestling and stuff. And I remember him saying, it's good that we appreciate that kind of thing, because not everyone in the audience obviously did. They were there to see the Bushwhackers or whomever. Well, that stuff, I do remember it going down really well. So that was cool. So fast forward just a few years later. So as I say, the scene's dead, apart from these shows, and there was a few others. There was no like local promotions. And then going back to that friend of a friend of a friend, I don't know how they met, but they met a group of lads. I think it might have been in like a nightclub or a pub or something. And they were big wrestling fans, to the point where they were saying that they were wrestlers. And it was like, what? Because as I say, the reason my first comments there was just to give you the idea, or to anyone watching that may not have an understanding, that meeting a wrestler was kind of like meeting, I would say probably royalty at this stage. It was very unlikely you were going to meet a wrestler in your lifetime. That's what it felt like. It's probably not the truth, but
what years was this?
So this is exactly 20 years ago now. So I'm going back to 2003. I was in my early 20s. I just got out of university. I was doing other things, didn't really know what I was doing, but I was going along with the ride. But they met this group of guys, and they were younger than me. So it's like a group of late teens, maybe some of them in their early 20s, maybe. And what they've done is they booked out a local leisure centre close to me. And they said, oh, we're going to be doing wrestling. And another friend of mine from school and stuff, he started going along and says, oh, yeah, they're doing wrestling on mats and stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I go along, and I meet the guy who would eventually be Dragon Izu, who used to wrestle for 1PW. And there was another guy there called Stevie Lynn, who at one point he was actually, a lot of people thought he was going to be like a big prospect in wrestling, but he eventually got out of it a few years later. But he was a good friend of mine for a few years there. He's doing well at the moment. I haven't seen him for years. But anyway, these group of lads, what we found out, that some of them, if not all of them, were backyarders. And I was like, that blew my mind. I was like, there's no backyard scene in the UK. Like, what are you talking about? This is, and a lot of them were doing it because of, I think, as much as they are as much of a good influence as you want to say on the current scene. I think they're as much as a bad a bad aspect of it, a bad influence, I should say. And I'm talking about the Hardy Boys. A lot of people like the Hardy Boys fans, they wanted to do, and they were looking up people and they were finding out people. And a lot of them loved Hayabusa for some reason. I don't know why. I was getting these tapes from Japan and stuff, and I was like, well, Hayabusa's, to me, he wasn't even like one of the main guys, but he was amazing. Don't get me wrong. But I'm like, well, I was into like Misawa and Kobashi and the All Japan Women and this other stuff, and it's like, these are all into Hayabusa. Okay, he's good, but but anyway, the point is, they had an entire community, and which blew my mind, and they were online, and so it shows what I know, and it sort of shafts everything I've just said about no communication on the internet, which obviously wasn't true. But a lot of them wanted to take it seriously, and they wanted to get out of being a backyard, and they wanted to train to be a professional wrestler. And I was like, well, how are they doing that? There's no way to do that. And you'd have to speak to some of them how they got in contact with this guy. But I just want to say, just very quickly offhand, this group. So people would come sometimes from all over the country that they'd met from the backyard and thing. And there was this young Geordie lad who came along, and I don't know if he'd had any training or what, but he'd done gymnastics and stuff. And I'm watching this kid, and he's he's a few years younger than me, and he's unbelievable. And the stuff he's doing, and I'm like, this guy's a natural talent. And everyone's saying, yeah, this guy's going to make it. This guy is unbelievable. Do you know who that was, Liam?
Go ahead.
That was Pac.
Oh, okay.
And he was called Pac then.
Wow.
It was incredible. Yeah. And you knew from the start, like he just had it. And he actually ticked some of my friends off, like the friend of a friend of a friend that we met, like, because he was like, oh, he's just doing all this flipping crap. He's not doing wrestling. He's like, but he's just naturally gifted. He's so good. And he's like, he's going to be something. And obviously we didn't know how far that would go. I imagined he might go abroad or whatever. Mm-hmm. But what he's done is incredible. Anyway, back to my point. I don't know how old you were then, Pac. Right.
I'm sorry. I've got a little follow-up question with that. Obviously,
go on then. Okay.
So obviously, you've obviously seen Pac obviously grow to do bigger things. I mean, what's that like for you personally, seeing that?
That's better. You know what, right? I used to get a buzz out of announcing these top names and Heroes of Man and stuff, and meeting all these, like big American names and big Japanese names and stuff. And to see your friend, and not just Pac, but to see a lot of them go on and do these amazing things was, I can't describe what it feels like. Just the fact that I see him on like ITV and stuff, and even before then, even when I remember the first time he went to Japan and he came back and he was so buzzing about it. And again, it was Hayabusa. He was like, oh, Stevie, I met Hayabusa. And I'm like, okay. Obviously that was a big deal for him. And, since then, from what he's done and working Dragon Gate and then just, going to WWE and then coming back. And I remember when he left and I seen him and he gave me the biggest hug in the world. And it was just awesome. And now obviously in AEW, and he'll go on and on. I think he's got some mileage left. He's unbelievable. But yeah, that's the best feeling in the world.
Awesome.
Anyway, so we've got this group, and obviously they want to be pro wrestlers. It's like who's going to train them and whatnot. And this is where they got in touch with Adam Brown. Now I should. And I'll talk about Adam Brown because I think he should be put over. And I was speaking to him the other day, and I know you're watching, Adam. So hello, Adam. He's a really interesting character, and what happened is he was based at the time. I think he lives in London now. He was based in South Shields, and I'm in Teesside. And I don't know if you know the Northeast. Everybody thinks we're Geordies, but we're not. As an ignorant Teessider, I always get South Shields and North Shields mixed up, and I'm sorry to anybody out there. I only know Teesside and then maybe Sunderland and Newcastle and whatever. But anyway, he was in the South Shields area. And the interesting thing about Adam Brown, and he did send me some notes, which I want to read because I did some homework here, because my understanding of Adam Brown was he had convinced the job centre to pay for him to go to America and train to be a pro wrestler. So if you've heard of New Deal, Liam, if anybody's heard it, I don't know if New Deal's still going on, it's still a thing.
I'm not sure.
This made headlines, and Adam told me, so I was speaking to him the other day about this, and these are his actual words because he sent me some notes and he just put, it was a load of rubbish about what the job centre did. They just took a load of credit for it. But what's interesting about Adam is he was in his mid-20s, I'm going to say, and he was ripped. And people said some nasty things about him. I think it was jealousy because of the way he looked. He was so ripped, and he looked at just this amazing physique. He looked like a bodybuilder. And he's been in the papers a few times. He couldn't remember this, but I'm telling you, it happened. There was a story, and I'm not going to say which newspaper it was. They had contacted him and said, because of your look, we want to use you for this news story and say that you had an affair with, I think it was Shakira. It might have been Rihanna. I can't remember. It was some pop star. And it's like, what? And it was in the paper, and there was his picture of Adam Brown in the paper. And I'm like, what is this? How do you get involved in this? He's not in wrestling now. He got into like B movies and stuff. He sent me a picture the other day where he looks like, Rambo. I don't want to talk about another Rambo, but yeah, he was dressed like Rambo. He did I'm a big Street Fighter mark, so he did like a Street Fighter fan movie where he was Ryu, and it was like, this is amazing what you're doing now, Adam. But he is, honestly, get him on the show. He's a really interesting guy, but I don't know how much about wrestling to talk to you about. But anyway, what happened was, these are my notes. So he went to Maryland, where he trained with SWL, SPWTC. It was House of Pain. I know that. It was House of Pain. He says the job centre paid for a cheap flight, and that's it. And it was around £340 return. And they made him sort they made him sort the rest out. Apparently, they didn't even pay for his train ticket. So he got a budget Indian Airlines return flight from Heathrow to JFK, New York, and back. Inside the plane, it looked like it had old wallpaper on, yeah. Plus the seats were odd in different colours. Every penny other than that came out of my pocket. So that's what happened. So Adam had gone to America, trained to be a wrestler, come back and opened up his training school. So he trained with a guy, going back to John Rambo, not the Stallone John Rambo, but the wrestler John Rambo now, with a guy called John Rambo. And I don't think John Rambo realizes the effect he's had, the cause and effect that he's had on so many people. And what I heard was last was John got really sick. I mentioned this to yourself the other day, Liam. And he's got a GoFundMe going at the moment, and I can send you the link. I know
the link is actually in the description of this video.
Brilliant. Okay, so never met the guy, but we wish him the best, and if you can offer something, anybody listening or watching this, we really appreciate it. I know Mick Foley tweeted about it, head shrink to Samu, and a bunch of new and old school guys have helped out with that. Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to put over John Rambo there. Anyway, what happened? Sorry, I told you this was a bit of a long-winded story. How did I become a ring announcer? I have no idea from this, but we'll get there. So what happened was Adam Brown. So he opens up this training school, and I remember a few people there. The people I've mentioned, Iceman was there, but he was already I know Iceman was already wrestling, so I'm not saying Adam Brown trained Iceman, but I remember him being there at one of the sessions. Hello, if you're watching. And then he wanted to create a promotion called Cream of Wrestling. What does that stand for, Liam?
Not a clue. I didn't even ask.
Cream of Wrestling. What does it stand for? What's the acronym? Sorry. Cream of Wrestling.
I have no idea, and I didn't even answer this.
COW.
Oh, okay.
COW. Cow. Hang on, it gets better. Now, I'm gonna get heat with Adam because he's gonna tell me I'm wrong and this is made up and this is a myth. But I am near certain that he proposed having his championship belt, cow, with udders. So the cow championship would have udders. I love you, Adam, by the way, but yeah, this is what he proposed. Now, cow never happened. I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe someone listening to this is going to take the idea and invent Cream of Wrestling. That'd be great, as long as you credit Adam Brown. I've got no problem with that. But anyway, what happened was, for whatever reason, and you would have to ask the people involved more than me about this, but Mike Groom, who was going along, he was like, I want to run events myself. I want to promote something just for our lads that have trained. And let's be, I mean, a lot of them were terrible. They weren't ready to wrestle, not in ring. And I certainly wasn't ready. I wasn't looking to be a wrestler. I was just going along for the ride. I said I'd help them out. But what they liked about me was whilst all these young kids were doing spots and stuff, I was cutting promos, I was selling. I had like 3 moves, so it was mostly selling on my part. And just as a fan for 20 years, for most of my life at that point, really, I was doing things that they weren't. I looked terrible. I wasn't prepared to go to the gym or anything like that. But these were really small shows. But Mike wanted to run. Now, at the same time, there was another promotion that just sprouted up out of nowhere called WZW, which again was based in the Northeast. And we went along and saw one of their shows. And to be honest, they had great talent. I thought, there was potential. Anyway, I would have said, a lot of guys that certainly better than what Mike could have used at that time with these young trainees that were really, a lot of them backyarders and stuff that were no good for the ring. So what happened was we went along, and whilst I liked the guys that were using, I think Mike agrees with me on this. I really hated the way it was presented, because it was very much. I mean, the pyro was good, and the lighting and stuff like that. They were doing things that you just didn't see at that time. But just the way it was, the attitude of you grunt, we groan. They had a band, and I don't want to put the band over because I thought they were terrible. And I know some people liked them and stuff, but I thought they were really that corny British sort of. They had their own WZW song, and I can tell you how it goes, and it's on YouTube somewhere, and it's terrible, and it's like WZW, light the fuse, and I just thought this is tacky, this is cheesy, this is everything I hate about like 80s British wrestling. I'm not talking about in ring now. I'm just talking about that whole, attitude of the big, not to disrespect Big Daddy, but the whole easy. It's very dated. Even then, to me, like that side of it, I just thought this is tacky and awful. But they did have some good talent, and I'm sure they put on some good matches and stuff, and did some good events. But Mike wanted to run on a shoestring, and he had all these guys, and they're all very green. But the ones that wanted to stay on, they got training with Adam Brown and stuff. And we met Doug Williams quite early. So Adam got into contact. I remember Doug Williams being there. Stevie Knight, I remember him doing a training session. So at the same time, you've got to understand that like FWA is like, to fans that know about it, that nationwide, it's like, oh, this is a big deal. This FWA thing's sort of coming up and stuff like that. So something's happening with British wrestling. And what I found out years later, not to go off on another tangent, but we went along to the first Ring of Honor event that was over here. That was Frontiers of Honor, where it was FWA versus Ring of Honor at Bethnal Green in London, the York Hall. And there was quite a lot of people at that event. I found out years later. I know Sanjay Bagga was there. There was probably others. A lot of guys that would go on and promote pro wrestling. I think Sanjay was there. If it wasn't Sanjay, I'm sorry, Sanjay, it was somebody else. But there was a few of them that were at that event and just got the idea that, we can do, what FWA is doing, or try to do a local promotion version of FWA. So that did influence a lot of people. Anyway, to cut a long story short, at this point, we did like a few shows. And like I did one singles matches. I was mostly in like tag matches and stuff, and I was terrible and I was blown up. But again, they liked that I sold, and the other guys just wanted to do, spots, and they were just young kids and stuff, and they didn't have gear. And, I had terrible gear. I had like Shawn Michaels knockoff pants and stuff like that, and they weren't good. And I remember, I'll tell you this quick anecdote. In Sunderland, we did an event, and the day before, we all got really drunk with Johnny Storm. Johnny Storm was there. And I was plastered, I was wrecked. And then it was like 4:00 in the morning. And Adam Brown was also a bouncer on the doors, I think. And he had this amazing sports car. It was like a Ferrari. I don't think it was a Ferrari, but it was, just think of that. And we stayed back at his flat and we were sleeping on the sofa. And it's like 4:00 in the morning, 4:30, Sunday morning. We've got an earlier show on the Sunday in Sunderland. And Adam just wakes me up, and he's in the kitchen. And he's like, "Do you want a steak, Stevie?" And I'm like, no, I don't want a steak. It's like 4:30. Adam, what are you talking about? I've been drinking all night, and now I've got a match, like one of the first few matches that I'm going to have. And I'm papping it, to be honest, because I'm terrible, and I'm going to get, my posterior kicked, so to speak. So what happened after that? Not long after, I was like, I'm not. I just can't take this seriously. And as a long-time fan, I think it's disrespectful what I'm doing. I'm not a wrestler. So I remember the conversation, phoning up like Dragon Eyes, who was organising like the training and stuff at the time, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. And then Mike phoned me not long after, and he went, you were always an announcer. You should be our ring announcer, because I couldn't find anyone permanent. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And it goes back to really 10 years before. I remember an occasion when this is when I'm like 13. I used to be in like a youth club with like the local church and stuff. And we do like, when you're away for like a weekend away with like, teenagers and stuff, we were doing skits, and we'd done like a WF skit. And I was Howard Finkel. And my friend was like dressed up like Shawn Michaels and Rowdy Piper and Hulk Hogan, and I was there and I was doing the voice. I can't do it now. It was like, the following contest is good. I can't do it. Like, I was so much better at doing Howard Finkel impressions then. But and it was like, what happened then, to cut a long story short, we can go back and forth, is from there, 3CW, Mike started getting other contacts. We got in touch with Conscience from SWA in Scotland and stuff. Magic, who was based in the Midlands, and then through different people, just a few years later, I'd worked for every major company in the country at that point, pretty much. I'd done All Star. I'd done stuff for various places. I'm trying to think of what else. Obviously, 1PW happened. I was doing RQW television in London with Len Davies, who I do want to speak about at some point today. What else was I saying? So there was a point where, when the wrestling channel was sort of taking off, we worked with like Blake Norton, who used to do the Bagpipe Report, who's the last survivor of the Hart Family Dungeon. That's a shoot. He got involved, and he was helping 3CW. And then I did like an angle with him where I was the ring announcer at ringside, and Dragon Eyes, who wanted me to be his partner, and I did that little bit. But aside from that, I was mostly announcing, and I was getting used all over. Skegness with Sykes, RTW. I do apologize if there's somebody I've missed here, because it's just random names that are coming to my head now. But I think what happened was, and then obviously Alex Shane did like the King of Europe event, and I did that whole weekend. And this is just a few years after I'd started. And I think that the reason is I became one of the most prolific ring announcers in the country. I'm on like 3 shows on the wrestling channel, doing commentary as well. For 1PW and RQW, I'm announcing with Dean Ayers, who's a great guy. And I'm also doing ring announcing. And I remember Len Davies was saying that he liked using me in the South just because he thought the northern accent, it was just a bit friendlier than the way Southern people were doing it. I'm not going to say that there's no good Southern ring announcers, because indeed there is. But one thing I did notice early on, a lot of what I was doing, I'd sort of taught myself just from watching, wrestling for so many years from all over the world and stuff. And I had, numerous suits, and I was buying more all the time. And sometimes they didn't fit, and sometimes they were this and that. But, you'd get places where they were just using like, the granny or someone from the club or whatever to be the ring announcer, and they had a bunch of papers and they're like that, going, all right, this next match. And I had cue cards, but I was trying to learn them a lot of the time. I'd step forth, I'd try and be in the center of the ring. People were walking around. I tried not to walk around too much. I did the first set of LDN tapings as well, for their TV show. I see bad habits all the time to this very day, Liam, and I don't understand it, because you don't see that on WTV. You don't see it in AEW. You don't see it in any major organization around the world where, announcers will lean against the ropes. Like I say, they'll talk whilst they're wandering around the ring. And I was trying not to do that. I was trying to do it right. I'm going to do it like I've seen on television, and I'm going to be passionate about this. And I think, I'm trying to take it seriously. And I think when you start taking it seriously, for whatever reason, sort of energy transfers, I do think, to the audience, and they take it seriously, you know. And I do think it's an important role. I think I'm not saying it's a hard job, but you know, when you mess up, people notice, or when you do something a bit strange, or does that make sense? You know what I'm trying to say. It's like, you know, when you can be professional and just present yourself better. There was a guy I remember with a great voice, but he just dressed. He was just so scruffy, and he was just had like a shirt on, and he hadn't shaved, and he looked terrible, and he's just you know, sat at ringside and out, and it's like, why don't you take a bit more pride in your work? You know, not that I'm taking pride for this, as you can see, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, I think that's why I was getting used, and at that point, yeah, I'd pretty much worked everywhere, and that was only a few years in. So
yeah, absolutely.
A bit long-winded, but hopefully we got there.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, we've got loads of other questions to go through, so we can get some quick ones. So I've always wanted to know this. So in the terms of obviously 1PW, so how much do you actually know during a show? Obviously, you know the format, obviously what matches are next, but does anything else you know? I mean, you don't have to go into like specifics, but what do you actually know?
Okay, so I've thought about this question because I knew it was coming, and I do have. I'm not going to show you this, but I do have the running orders for 1PW here, right? So your basic event. So let's say it's just one of these small shows at the town hall, or not necessarily a small show, but you know what I mean. It's not being televised. It's just you know, we've got, let's say we've got traditional British wrestling card. We've got 4 or 5 matches. So I'll get the running order. Sometimes you know, I've got to make my own cue cards, and they've just wrote it out in the back. That has happened, you know, 5 minutes before the event. These are the matches. Do it in the ring, because those are the pros. You know, they know what they're doing, those guys. But yeah, so this is the run. So these days, it's like, this is the running order, and it'll just say like match number 1. This guy's music first, so I'll do that how I do it. You know, this match is 1 fall. Introduce the first. I know the first guy that's coming out. And then it's against this guy, and all the running order will say a lot of the time is, you know, this guy's going over. This is how long they've got. Sometimes on these events, when it's only, I hate saying show, by the way, we can get onto that later if you want. But these events have got like 4 or 5 matches. They might not even get a time, so we just expect everyone's going to do what they feel the audience wants. So 15 to 20 minutes, something like that, and it'll just be bell to bell. This guy's over, and that's it. If I'm involved, so if you know, something's happening in the match where I've got to announce, you know, the match is going to like a restart, or if there's like a dusty finish, or something like that, or there's something specific that I need to know that's going to happen, they'll tell me. Not that they always tell me, so you just sort of go with it. It really annoys me when people say that wrestling's acting, because it's not. I like, and I don't know who said it. Wrestling's reacting. You know, because you can change on the fly depending on what's happening, because you never know for sure what exactly is going to happen out there, and they don't always tell me, you know, changes to the finish or something else is going to happen. But a lot of the time, I know exactly, you know, what's gonna happen at the end of the match, if not during. Usually not every little minute detail. When we do like television stuff, like when I worked for What Culture Pro Wrestling, and we did like pay-per-views and stuff, they went into more detail because it's on the minute. 1PW were very professional. I'd like to say, I'm not going to show you this, but I'll read like one of their running order now, and hopefully Stephen Gartley won't go mad.
Which show is it?
Very structured. So we can do the last one if you want. So
All or Nothing.
This is All or Nothing. This is production format. It says it's got the date: Doncaster, England. Doors 5 o'clock. Kickoff match 6:15. Main show 6:45. And they've timed out everything, and it works beautifully. It really does. This is like how WE do it. I worked for Impact, and it was like this for Impact, where it was by minute. We went out live for the UK event a few years ago. So it's kind of like, so I'll just give you an example. So I've got the kickoff running order,
which was, at least if I can remember this rightly, it was Newman and Vucic versus Will Cruz and Amir Jordan.
Well, even before that, they've got details. So 5:15 kickoff package 1, 5:30 kickoff activities, and it tells you about Jesse Maria going out and Richard Young to interview fans, Greg Burridge in ring interview. But yeah, if we move down again, this is so detailed, and it's so brilliant, because this is how, you know, major promotions do it. kickoff segment. So obviously the match changed a little bit. So yeah, Amir Jordan and Will Cruz versus Miles Kamen it was, and Vusic. So 6:15, Amir Jordan entrance, ring announcers, music, mic up. 6:16:30, Will Cruz entrance, ring announcers, mic up. 6:15:30, Miles Kamen entrance, ring announcer. And then it's got a guide here just telling you what the match is, how long the match has got, the ring announcer. I didn't do that one, Jesse Maria, the referee, who the referee is, and the finish. And it goes into detail like that. Like the first one I did, like it's got my little bit about going out. And it was timed so well that I didn't even know if I was going over or not. And then I'm looking at my time and I'm like, this has worked so well. When it's organized like this, it's unbelievable. And I can't put 1PW over enough for doing it like this. Segment one, again, this is like when I worked for Impact. So segment one here. So we've got a little bit before that, light show, crowd shots, obviously the opening sequence. Segment one, Will Ospreay versus Bobby Fish. 6:47. Did it happen at 6:47, Liam? It's pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah. Will Ospreay's music, ring announcers, mic up. So that's when I start talking, if you remember when the entrance is happening, rather than before then. 6:49, Bobby Fish entrance, ring announcers, mic up. So there you go. Match, Will Ospreay versus Bobby Fish. Match duration, I won't tell you how long that got. Ring announcer, Stevie Aaron, referee Scott Bell. And then the finish. Yeah, so, I mean, that is so well detailed. But as for every little thing that happens in the match, absolutely not, no. If I need to know, I need to know. Sometimes they don't want me to know. Sometimes changes do happen. I remember being really surprised, and I'm not going to say who again because I don't want to get too much away, and I'll get in trouble. Probably not, but last October, one of the finishes completely different. The different person went over. I only found out afterwards why that was. There was a reason. It was a good reason as well. It wasn't, fans like the whole, that person wouldn't job. That person wouldn't. And I'm like, no, it's not that. There was a reason. There was a good reason.
If I remember rightly, last October was a new. No, I'm not. It's the pay-per-view. I think was a new twist of fate. If I remember rightly,
it was a new twist of fate. And one of the finishes I didn't know, so I just went along with it. And I'm like, okay, this person. There was actually two finishes changed. They did warn me about one of them. They could, but there was a reason. See, this is the thing. You read stuff online, and fans get annoyed. Oh, this person wouldn't job. Or this the famous one is the heat. Like Hulk Hogan gets like about him being an egomaniac and all this kind of stuff, and he's like, oh, he wouldn't go over. It doesn't work for me, brother. And yeah, he probably did say that, but the thing is, there was a reason, and WCW would daft enough to give him creative control anyway, so he wasn't doing anything wrong, was he? I mean,
no, not really.
It's in his contract. You do the same. You know what I mean? But there's more to it. It's not just a case, I'm not jobbing. There's a reason. They're looking, I think wrestlers, a lot of them now, particularly, look, it's good as well. They look at a bigger picture. It's like, well, if I lose here, well, what happens on the next event? What happens after that? What reason is there for this? And if there's no reason, I think they're within their right to speak up and say, no. It's like the I don't mean to get onto this really, but like the Sasha Banks and Naomi thing. If what came out is true, and they were told this is what's happening, and then they went back on that, I think they were within their rights just to walk out, because it's like, well, they're not listening to us. And I don't know if that's what happens. But do you know what I mean? There's more to it. There usually is more to it. I think it's brilliant at 1PW at the moment, because I've never felt it like this before. And Stephen will agree, Stephen Gartley, that there was, I can't even put it into words really, but there was just a feeling that everyone's on the same side. Let's all work together. I was there like 4 hours, like my friend had a go at me because he was like, why do you want to go 4 hours before, the event? And I was like, because I want to know everything that's going on, like in terms of this, like this match order, and this happens here and this happens there. Not what's happening in the match, but what the order of events and this video is going to play and stuff. And he's like, you really need 4 hours for that? Well, when I arrived, they grabbed me straight away, and I was there with them. I had to meet the guys when they were coming through the curtain, and I was in like the gorilla position, I suppose you'd call it, behind the curtains. I was there all night until I went out. And I was like, we were going through everything, like, yes. And it's so much better. And I love it when everyone's doing that, and all the production people, they're so good. And they deserve all the credit in the world. whoever those guys were on production, I doubt they're watching, but I want them to know that like I really appreciated being in that kind of environment when you go to these other events and people really don't know what's happening and stuff, and to have it so structured and stuff. And anyway, what was the question?
We've got one more question for announcing, then we'll obviously get into detail with 1PW. So, do you have any like preparation before you actually go out and obviously ring announce? Do you obviously, I imagine your throat's a big part.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look after it as well as I used to, but I drink a lot of water. I got addicted to water, which isn't the worst thing in the world to get addicted to.
No.
It's better than this, but it's just drinking a lot of water before an event. What I used to do, funnily enough, Liam, I always used to take my toothpaste and I used to get a shave before I don't know why I did that, but I just felt the need of like I'm gonna brush my teeth, have a shave, splash on a lot of aftershave, just so that wrestling fans know that aftershave exists. No, I don't mean that. Well, I used to be obsessed with I don't do that now. I do it before, I get a shower before I set off in the car, depending on how far it is and stuff. But yeah, I sort of go back and forth. People see me, I go over the notes again and again, and I'm thinking about things, and but the best feeling is the best thing about wrestling, for me, is just seeing people. Where you see people backstage and stuff, it's cool. I'm not saying everybody's like my best friend and stuff, but it's better when you get on with everyone. I mean, I want to, I'll give a big shout out to Martin Stone because that really meant a lot to me, and it might have just been something in passing to him, but I hadn't seen him for over a decade, and he comes over, he walks through the curtain again. I'm there with production, trying to figure everything out, and he's just like, Stevie, he puts his hand out, and we hugged and stuff, and it was like, man, I'm trying to work out the last time we've seen each other, and we sort of reminisced and talked a bit about a match he had with Iceman in the Dome years ago and where it was, and we were looking in the stands and stuff like that. It really means something to me. When the guys shout you out and we sort of have our little in jokes and stuff like that, it's like I don't want to kill kayfabe, but like Lizzie's a character. Like she the last event, I wasn't going to say this, but she grabs me from behind and asks me in a full Nelson. Just like, and I'm like, just getting attacked backstage, and I'm like Lizzie's just a character. She's great, and I'd just shout abuse at him, and it's like, nah, you're not going over now. That's it. And
that's brilliant. Now, I just want to interrupt you there slightly because you just mentioned Martin Stone. So we said obviously that we have actually got a big guest coming on next month. I'm actually pleased to announce for people listening, the very person who Stevie's just mentioned there, Martin Stone, will be on this very, very show on June the 3rd at this exact time. So obviously he's got an amazing career. Obviously he's been big part 1PW. He went on in NXT. He had a short stint in Impact. So I'm super excited to obviously have him on the show. That's June 3rd at this exact time. Martin Stone will be on the Magic of Wrestling.
Well, before we move on, Liam, if it's all right with you, I just want to mention, so early on, when I started working for RQW, and I want to put RQW over because Len Davies, he was such a great guy, and he sadly passed away last year, and he really did live out his dream. He went to America and he was doing production, and he was trying to get, different sort of television projects and stuff off the ground, and he really, really meant well for British wrestling. I used to travel in the car with a group of guys on a Sunday to do the television tapings for RQW. And we'd travel hours and we'd get home at like 6 a.m. on the Monday. And they all hated it. And the reason they hated it, and I'm sure they don't mind me saying that because a lot of those guys aren't wrestling anymore. In fact, none of them are, so it doesn't matter. I'm not going to say who it was still, but they hated it because there was like 30 people in the crowd tops. We were traveling for so long. It really brought them down, but I loved it because the production was something, Len Davies, he really put a lot of work into. If you go back and watch that stuff from 2007 onwards, he was, he was doing stuff before its time, like the green screen. He was doing like the virtual sort of studio and stuff, and he would present the events. And he promoted it, and I remember the Knights were involved and helped promote it and stuff as well. We were trying to do this TV show and do tapings and stuff, and I got to commentate with Dean Ias, who I hadn't seen for years, who I loved to bits and learned so much from him. And I was ringing out as well, so I was doing like double duty. But the point is, then the main guy that got behind was Martin Stone, And the same thing happened when FWA came back as well, a sort of similar setup. Except it was, it was run by Alex Shane. Alex Shane had been involved in RQW as well, and they were pushing like Martin Stone as the main guy. And I think the reason for that was he was a great all rounder. He had a great look. He looked so much better than the majority of UK wrestlers and stuff. I mean, even back then, Martin Stone, we invested a lot into, and I completely understand why. So I just want you, when you speak to, Martin, you maybe get his opinion on that and see what he thinks. But Len Davies, yeah, he was such a good guy, and I really wish I'd got to see him in person again.
Yeah, absolutely. I will obviously mention that on the show. So next little segment we've got, obviously, 1PW is obviously a big part of you now. So obviously 1PW came back in October. So after I think was it 17-year hiatus? Is that wrong or along that line?
No, it started 17 years before that. I heard you say that, and I was like, no, what's he talking about? That was the first 1PW in 2005. It'd been without Stephen Gauntly though. It'd been over a decade. So
yeah. Okay. So yeah, obviously they made the big return after so many years out. I'll just say that without getting that wrong. But so I want to rewind a little bit. Obviously, how did you obviously know that 1PW was obviously coming back?
I can tell you the date. I can't tell you the date, but we can work it out. So if you could do that, Liam, because I'm going to tell you when it was. So there was this event, and it was called WrestleGate, and they did a matinee show. Okay, I'm going to just fill you. This is in why I was there. So it was with New Generation Wrestling, who I work for and who I love, the people behind New Generation Wrestling. They're based in the Hull area, and we did the sort of afternoon event, and then they did an event on the evening. Now, this show is historic because this was the card. This is in 2019 where Pac wrestled Hangman Adam Page. Instead of at the AEW event. So the AEW pay-per-view was going to happen, if you remember the first one, and it had that match, Pac versus Adam Page. And there was reasons why Pac couldn't go and do the pay-per-view with Adam Page. So they did the match as a surprise at this WrestleGate event. And I knew it was happening. And I was actually in the crowd, and I was like, I can't wait for this reaction when they realize Adam Page is here and he plays his music, he comes out. And there was a group of guys there that I recognized from the old 1PW. And I'm like, oh, it's cool to see you. And I remember having a big chili dog and a beer. And I'm like, I did the afternoon event. I'm going to sit around, watch this tonight's show. And I'm like, it's a shame Stephen Gauntly isn't here. And I didn't recognize the guy. I'm sorry, Stephen, I didn't recognize you. And he was there right in the middle with a big grin on his face. And he's going, how you doing, Steve? And I'm like, I don't believe it's you. So I give him a big hug. And then we got talking, and very quickly he's going, are you going to come back, Steve? And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, 1PW, we're going to bring it back. And I want you there. You're the second person I'm going to book. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And it's like, Steve, if you run the Doncaster Dome event, I'm not even going to think about it. I'll be there. So if you can find that date when it was, the week before the first AEW pay-per-view, that WrestleGate show where it was Pac versus, I should have researched this. Hangman.
Yeah, I should have as well. Maybe it's me in the comments.
Do you want me to look?
Yeah, go on. I trust your judgment whether I trust me on.
Okay. Versus Hangman. I'm sure you can just type in Adam Page. Pac versus Hangman Adam Page. There it is. It says 5th to the 18th in Nottingham, so that'll be right. So this is the 18th of May. So nearly exactly 4 years ago.
Wow.
In Nottingham, England. There you go. That was when I knew the 1PW was definitely coming back. Rumored, but I expected it to. After speaking to Stephen, he was so enthusiastic, and then sadly, the COVID thing happened, and then it worked out quite well though, given what happened with British wrestling after that. Obviously, NXT UK, going down, and the all the things that happened during the pandemic. I don't want to get into that really, but you know what I'm talking about. And and then Steve's like, this is the time, and it's like it's just worked out so well, and it's just the planets in alignment, or whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe in. It's it just happened. So,
yeah, absolutely. So obviously, what was that like for you? Obviously, doing the first 1PW event once they came back.
It was awesome, but it was a learning. What's the word? It was a learning experience, but it was because the reason I say that was because we thought like it was cool because I went out and people knew who I was. But some of the people from, I don't know why that is. Some of the people from previous sort of 1PW events and stuff didn't get over as well as we thought they would. I think it may be because I've sort of kept on going and I did like World Culture Pro Wrestling and NGW. I don't do as many events as I used to, and I can obviously talk about that later. But there was people who hadn't wrestled for a long time, and they showed up, and I don't know. I mean, no offense to like Greg Burridge and Colt Cabana, because I think if they did get over, and people obviously know Colt and Greg is not wrestled as much. I don't know if he considers himself part-time or partially retired or what now. You would have to ask him, and I'm sure he's got lots of great stories as well. I don't know how well they remember Team Shag from, years ago. And I'm not disrespecting, those guys. Please, I don't want hate for that. But just when they came out and stuff, and he did his his sort of Blur rendition of that song. But it got over in time, I think, and just the 1PW chant as well. There was a bit. I'll be honest. Like I thought I would have been close to tears, and it didn't quite happen at first. It was strange because I'm stood in the ring, and Stephen told me to milk it and milk it and milk it until I raised the microphone and announced the event and the first match. And there was a bit of a chant and stuff, but it wasn't quite as loud. And it only got loud, I think, when they seen Robbie X versus Ace Austin, and that match was so great. And for me, probably the match of the night. It got over so well, and then the 1PW chant came later, and I think it was a combination of people being maybe too young for the previous 1PW, the fan base changing, people not knowing what to expect due to various reasons, the ups and downs of 1PW, and then when it came, it was after that match and after the next match, and it was going boom, 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 and suddenly it was getting over, and then there was a big 1PW chant. It was like, okay, we know what this is now. They didn't know what to expect, so it came later in the evening, and I thought it would have been from the start, but it was an experience. Yeah, it was great.
Absolutely, and obviously, fast forward then was obviously no turning back, which the main event. Look, this was probably my match, and I still watch this match back now. Is Robbie X, obviously the Lincoln Boy, versus Will Ospreay. I mean, I absolutely love the backstory to this. The whole match is, I love it. Do you know what I mean? This is probably one of my favorites, since obviously the return.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. It was really good. Lincoln was different again though, because when I went out at the start, there was for whatever reason, and you can ask. I was with Jessie Maria, obviously, newer sort of announcer, and I've done it. I don't know how long she's done it for. We both went out at the start just to explain to the crowd, and that was why we did it, to explain to them that the lights are going to go dark, and then the video is going to play, and then the lights and the cameras will be on you, and then we want you to cheer. It might have been ignorance on our part, I don't know, but in October we just assumed that people would react like they do, on a WE pay-per-view or AEW or whatever, where the lights just come on after the video. But for some reason, they didn't pick up on that on the first one, I don't think. And then on this one, I explained it to them, but they were red hot from the moment I went out in Lincoln, because I just remember going out, and again, I had the jitterbugs or whatever you want to call it, and I was just like, all right, Lincoln! And I was just like, a Kiss concert, something. And it was just like, whoa, yeah, this is class, because we're all sort of cramped together. I don't know if you felt that energy. It was different sort of vibe again. I'm not saying Lincoln's better than Doncaster, by the way. I'm just saying it was just completely different energy. But that match was unbelievable. And I will tell you this, we thought that they may have gone over 30 minutes. And they didn't quite get to it, but it was still a long match. It was still a great match. And Will wasn't feeling too well that day. And to do that, I mean, the guy is a freak. I think it was... it wasn't long after that I was listening to Meltzer. It was a Wrestling Observer Radio, and whatever you think of him, I mean, he was spot on what he said. He was just like, if you've got the chance to go see Will Ospreay, go see him, because he's not going to phone it in. And I'm not saying 1PW is on the level of one of these nothing indie events that happen out there, but you know what I mean. Like it doesn't matter what the event is. It doesn't matter if it's in Wrestle Kingdom or if it's at your local town hall or whatever. Will Ospreay's just going to go, and he's just going to put it on like it's the biggest match in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his attitude to everything. And that match, he knew that, to be honest, I thought he was going to get booed. I don't know if you thought that.
I did. I mean, I
Being
thought we were going
Lincoln?
to. Yep.
Yeah.
I honestly thought he was going to get booed. Obviously, Robbie being the hometown boy, but
It didn't
the
happen.
crowd was kind of torn. I mean, obviously, you got Will Ospreay, one of the biggest names, and yeah, I felt like the crowd was so torn. But the atmosphere for that match for me was absolutely second to none.
It was incredible, and the story they told, just watching it, all these people who say like Will Ospreay is just a spot monkey, they're completely missing. What are they talking about? I mean, I watched him and Kenny at Wrestle Kingdom, and I'm just like, everything they did made sense for that story. It really did. It was like, this just every little thing. I'm just like, this is absolutely incredible. Like, what he does every time, just his movement, his. Again, I struggle to put Will Ospreay into words because he's just he is unbelievable, and he deserves to be on top of that Wembley Stadium show, and hopefully he'll have the 1PW belt with him, but we'll see.
There you go.
Matt Cardona might have something to say about that, but
we shall see. But yeah, obviously,
we shall see.
After no turning back, obviously recently we've had All or Nothing where we got 4 champions crowned. Obviously, Robbie X became the openweight champion. Lizzie Evo became the women's champion. Will Ospreay became the world champion. And Boisterous Disastrous became the tag team champions.
Boisterous behaviour.
Yeah.
What did you say? Boisterous disaster?
I don't even know what I've just said that for. But obviously 4 new champions were crowned. Unbelievable. Do you know what I mean?
Again, I was worried how long that event was going to go, and I questioned it with Stephen and said, this is there's a lot going on this card. And then when we finished earlier than a new Twist of Fate and even No Turning Back, I think I was quite surprised. But there was a lot going on. I'm glad everybody followed it okay.
Mm-hmm.
What I was happy about, actually, in a funny sort of way, as much as people were annoyed that like Cody didn't win the title at WrestleMania and stuff, was we did a finish, I think, and people were happy with it. There's a video on YouTube. I don't know who did it. You might have seen it yourself, Liam, where it's on a fan's phone, and it's when Cara Noir's got Mark Haskins in the submission finisher. And they're like, oh, and they think that's the finish. And then they see in the corner that Will Ospreay's got the referee. And then when he goes over and he hits his finish, gets the pin, and then there's still a pop, even though some people wanted Cara Noir to win. They were still quite pleased that Will Ospreay won, if that makes sense. And I think, even though I'm a big fan of, definitive heel, definitive face, and at the moment we've got shades of grey with Will, because he's obviously got the heel attitude, but people still like him because he's a great worker and stuff. I think, that everyone was satisfied. I didn't see anybody that was unsatisfied with the champion, to be honest. So we're doing something right in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. We obviously
you tell me.
Yeah, we said it obviously on our review show, which obviously we did for 1PW, and Paul, who obviously was on the show, he said that the 4 people in that main event, obviously Mark Haskins, Lance Archer, Cara Noir, Will Ospreay, he would have been happy with any single one of them people, the champions, which that says a lot for obviously 1PW.
And I loved that Lance Archer as well went into the 4-way match because I think, the obvious thing to do, and a lot of people did predict this, would be, those 4 mainstays, talking about Nathan Cruz going over instead, and that they would have expected that. And the fact that it didn't happen, and I think it was right that it didn't happen, and Nathan Cruz has got his obvious, issues with D'Lo at the moment. I think, it's another story. So if he's got another story, he's going to be occupied with that whilst, someone like Lance Archer. Well, I don't know if you ever thought that at any point, Liam. If anybody ever thought that maybe Lance Archer's winning the title, but you never say never when, why has he won that? You know what I mean? I don't know if that was maybe put in people's heads and thought, well, that's interesting. Where they're going with this? And he's been announced for the next event. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the like you say, any one of those could have won it, and that might be, the what's the poker term? I don't know. My mind's gone blank now. But you know, out of those 4 guys, yeah, he might be last on the list to win the title. But it's still a possibility, you know, and I like that.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So obviously next up we've got Devil's Due, which obviously I'm going to be there as well. I mean, there's 4 big matches obviously been announced already. You've obviously got Matt Cardona versus Will Ospreay. Everyone's looking forward to that one. We've got Robbie X versus Trey Miguel, and I'm actually looking forward to this. I think that's going to surprise a few people.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Trey Miguel's unbelievable. Yeah, I don't know. That could be the one. You know, it could be the standout match.
And then obviously we've got Luke Jacobs versus Irai, and then recently Scotty Rourke versus Zachary Wentz, which I think that's another good one. I mean, one thing I like, and obviously we spoke about this before we came on the air, is obviously we've seen these wrestlers like in mixed tag matches, obviously like 6-pack challenges, but now we're going to see them one-on-one in a ring. Fold. Yep. So I'm actually looking forward to that. So.
And this was one of the things that I'll just quickly say. This was one of the things the original 1PW was criticised for, and it shows how the fan base has changed as well. Because you know, a lot of people were like, "Why aren't they putting the British guys over?" Whereas now, some people were surprised at some of the finishes on the last few events that we've had, where they're like, "Oh, the American guy didn't win there. That's interesting. Why didn't you put?" You know, this person over. Like the Jimmy Hayter thing. I did read a few people were quite surprised that Martina, you know, pinned her, and it was like, why aren't they putting Jimmy Hayter? Well, the answer is obviously Jimmy Hayter is not going to be back on the next. She might be back one day, but at the moment, you know, do you know what I mean? And it just shows how the fan base has changed, and they don't. I'm not going to say they don't understand certain things, but there's a reason for that.
I will be honest, I was a bit surprised that obviously Jamie lost as well. But do you know what? In a good way, I'm like, okay, I'm surprised here. Let's see where they go with this.
Yeah.
And that's obviously from a fan's point of view. So, yeah, one last thing for obviously the 1PW section. What can fans expect from Devil's Due? Can you give anything away? Anything at all?
I don't want to give away. I will say that I like this event as a more sort of traditional wrestling fan. I think there was a lot of gimmick matches on the last event, which is good, and we were making new champions. But now the direction started, you know, that was a chance to show who the new champions are and sort of tell that story. That's the end of kind of it's not even the first chapter. It's kind of like the prelude that's finished now. That part of 1PW, and now this is the fresh chapter. So you're going to see a lot more traditional matches, but it's a chance for the guys instead of sort of you know, working you know, the gimmick. Not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's going to be, you know, strictly one-on-one matches, tag matches. Of course, all the matches haven't been announced yet, and I don't want to give anything away, but yeah, the matches that have been announced, you know, let's see a few surprises in them non-title matches.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously that wraps up the 1PW section. Now, obviously we've been speaking obviously back and forth, obviously on Messenger, and if I say Inside the Ropes, I'll let you tell people all about it.
Yeah, so Inside the Ropes magazine, there it is. Obviously, it's in the shops now. You can subscribe to this. This came out during the pandemic, and people were like, "Why are they releasing a magazine during the pandemic? It's crazy." But what happened was with the editor, they contacted me and they were asking me, "Is there anyone who can review like wrestling video games?" Because they thought it'd be, you know, a different sort of interesting section, and I couldn't really think of anybody to put them in touch with. But I ended up doing it myself. So there's my 2K23 review for that issue. So this is the latest one that's out. The new one will be out soon. That what you showed there is WrestleMania the arcade game review from the month before. But each month I'd sort of just randomly just pick a game out from the past. And the thing with wrestling games, I mean, we didn't really talk about my fandom much, but I'm kind of part of Gen X, I suppose, rather than you. Obviously, you're a millennial, Liam. Not that I've got anything against that, because I'm nearly there, but not quite. I think we were the first generation to experience sort of the video game thing. Obviously, Ryzen. I had an Atari 2600. I had a ZX Spectrum. I had a Commodore 64. I had an Amiga, and then I had later. I've so many consoles. I had a Super Nintendo, and I was quite lucky at the time, even though it was kind of illegally. get able to get hold of these amazing wrestling games from Japan, like the Fire Pro Wrestling series and stuff that just wasn't released in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And through a friend, and we played all these wrestling games early. Played wrestling games from the PS1 era. Again, they were in their infancy, and sort of seen them come up and evolve and stuff. So really, the editor was like, "Why don't you just write them?" And I'm not an influencer. I'm not a YouTuber. I've written sort of fan reviews in the past online before, but I don't even claim to really be a critic. I'm just someone who kind of grew up with them. I'm not an expert on the subject matter or anything like that, though I do my research for each game. But when I stop and think about it, I've played so many wrestling games over the years. They're just hundreds of the things, and probably most of them. So I thought, well, I'll just write it as long as I've got complete freedom, and they give me that. They just say you can review current games, which I do, but I can also go in the past and just pick something out. Sometimes I do something really obscure. I reviewed a game last year, might be in the year before actually, which was on the Amiga that I really liked, and I couldn't find hardly anything about it online, called TNT Wrestling, and it was actually a public domain game. And this is like in the early 90s and stuff. I was like, I want to write about that. I want to put that in. So along with the sort of classic WE games that everyone loves and stuff, the SmackDown games, and I haven't done the No Mercy review. I know when I'm going to do that. That's coming because everyone sort of holds that on the pedestal as the sort of greatest. Even though there's others I actually prefer, but I'm not gonna diss No Mercy. I wouldn't dare, because I'll get hate mail. But I've been lucky to sort of grow up with them and stuff. So I just like to, each month, it's just a small article, write about wrestling video games, and that's about it. That's as far as it goes with Inside the Ropes. But obviously, check them out. Inside the Ropes magazine you could subscribe to, and it does really well considering the print format's supposed to be dead. You can get it digitally as well, and it's a great mag. And Finn Martin writes for them, who wrote for Power Slam, who was a big influence in the 90s, I think, more than he thinks. And I have had the pleasure to meet Finn in person, with Power Slam magazine and Superstars of Wrestling before that. Great guy. Taught us so much in the 90s about other wrestling promotions outside the WF. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have known about ECW and Japan and all these other places around the world. So it's very, the stuff by Finn is far better written, and that doesn't even that's bad grammar as well, than anything that I could write. But the editor's all over my stuff. Don't worry about that. Yeah, it's a great mag, and I recommend it. And I'm not just saying that because I write for them.
There you go. So you've pretty much covered everything now. So the last thing I've got is, it's called, I'm sure obviously you've been traveling a lot of it, so I'm sure you've got some stories to tell. So we've got a bit of time. So go on, okay. I'll let you tell a couple of stories, one or two.
There's a lot of, I was thinking about this, there's a lot of stories where the kind of stupid in jokes where you would have to know the characters, usually me, to understand the humor that we all have. But there is a few. Oh gosh, I've obviously talked about the steak one with Adam Brown. Just daft things like that. I remember we did. I think it was an RQW event. I'm pretty certain it was. I don't know where it was. It was maybe at York Hall, maybe. And what I tend to do, Liam, I do have my cue cards, but sometimes I like to. You'll notice I do both. I sometimes like to memorize it. Sometimes I don't, depending on the situation. Because look, anybody that's criticizing, again, you talk about fans being too harsh about things. Anyone who's criticizing a ring announcer for having cue cards, look, they've got them in the UFC. Bruce Buffer's the man. He is so good. As a matter of fact, just a name drop. I had a good conversation about Bruce Buffer and Michael Buffer with Jim Cornette when he was over for What Culture, and he told me, he's like, how come no one says, wrestling out of, when you say in the hometown, everyone says fighting, because that's what we do. We're doing Bruce Buffer impressions, me and Cornette, and we go fighting out of New York City, and he's like, no one says wrestling out of. So I do that sometimes. You notice I might not do it for 1PW, but I've done it for a few places, and I think it's kind of cool. Anyway, my point was, I was memorizing the main event for this RQW show, and I'm in the ring, and I've memorized, each guy's weight, hometown, everything that's going to happen, including, it's one fall. I think it was 60-minute time limit. It's for the FWA British Heavyweight Championship. And I even know the referee. All right. So I'm in the ring and I say that. And then I'm like, the man in charge of the action when the bell rings, Mr. Andy Quilden. And some of the fans are laughing because I noticed that there's nobody in the referee. There's nobody in the ring. There's no referee in the ring. I'm like, where's the referee? And then I realize what they're laughing at. And he comes up and just taps me on the shoulder. And it's Steve. I can't tell you what he said, but it's Steve Linsky. It's not Andy Quilden. Now, I don't know if you know Andy Quilden.
No, I don't.
He runs Rev Pro. How can I describe him? So they're going to hate me for this. So he's at the time, he's a thin black guy. And Steve Linsky is a big, sorry, Steve, I love you a bit, but he was at the time, he was bigger, just, just milk white guy. He's just the whitest guy in the world. And I'm like, oh no. And then, but the thing is, I can quickly improvise, and I'm like, well, it appears FWA management or RQW management have appointed a new referee for this match, Steve Linsky. And I have to quickly improvise. But I don't know, I'm going to chuckle out of that because it's just like, oh man, I had that memorized perfect, and then it's a different guy in the ring and stuff. Other things, stories and stuff. Just really stupid ribs and stuff, I can remember somebody put a load of onions in my bag one time, which was stupid because I give them hell and ruined my bag. Thanks for that. I know it was. Stupid things. I can't really think of any good ones. There was one venue. There was this idiot, right? And I don't mind calling him an idiot because he's not involved now, and he just wanted to be involved in wrestling, but he was no good at anything. And we went into the venue. And they were really strict, and it was like a town hall. And the guy's like, "This floor is immaculate. I want it to stay immaculate. It's polished, it's shiny. You can see your reflection in the floor. So put the mats down, put the ring down carefully. I don't want a single scratch on this floor for a wrestling event. I mean, come on." But anyway, this guy comes in, the idiot, and he's just dragging the ropes like this, and like the hook. Like the metal hook on the end of the ropes. He's just dragging that across the floor, and it's just Mark, just on cue, just walks in at the time, and it's like, oh, what have you done? What are you doing? No, you're gonna I was like a sitcom, like just on cue, and it was just like, man. But just stupid stuff like that. I'm trying to think of anyone in specific I could talk about, but not really. I'm sure something will come back to me later. Maybe I'll come on again, Liam, and we can talk about that sort of thing. But
yeah, maybe we can do a part 2 and just have a stories from Stevie.
I'd have to start thinking though. But it's cool. Yeah, I did want to name drop a few people, but I will say, it was cool. Just a few years in, you're announcing, working for 1PW, and you're announcing AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels, who I was a big fan of, and the TNA guys are there and stuff, and meeting Tracy Smothers, who was such a great guy. He was awesome, and then you get to drink with him and stay out, out with him late in the hotel, and Abyss. Just listening to Abyss talk about how he put matches together and talking to his opponent and stuff was just amazing. But I remember like a fan showing up one time at the hotel, found out where the wrestlers were, and he was dead. That was over for him because, he decided to take chops, and Samoa Joe's there, and Samoa Joe's chopping the guy, and then everyone's chopping. I think AJ was there, maybe AJ, and Daniels was definitely having a go, and just watching all these, big name wrestlers just chop this poor kid and stuff was awesome. And then, just a couple of years later, meeting and getting to announce the Great Muta as something I never thought would happen. Just feeling his presence, I can't even describe it, Liam. It's insane. I'm in the ring and I'm doing my best. Gary Michael Capetta, how he used to announce it, where it's like the Great Muta. I'm doing my best. Gary Michael. It was so good, and I'm in the ring doing my Gary Capetta, and he's in the aisleway, and I can feel him. Like I can feel the guy's presence, and he's like Great Muta, and it's like it's amazing. And announcing Bret Hart and. Getting his picture just before we step through the curtain, because that thing about you don't get pictures with people if you're in the business and stuff. It's like there's certain people where yes you do, And you should get pictures with people anyway, because one day you'll regret it. You really will. And it's funny how many people I miss now and stuff. But and Ric Flair as well. I got to do the Q&A at 1PW with Flair, and this was the same year he'd done the WrestleMania match with Shawn Michaels and stuff, and just going backstage and I thought I was in like a Raw Nitro skit or something. So I just went, because I go in and Flair's there and he's got his own dressing room. And before we went out, actually, I'd said to him, because I don't know if you know the controversy about how many championships he's really held. So yes, it's like, so people say he's 16-time world champion, but I'm like, really, it's 22, right? So I'm saying to him, I was like, so how do you want to be? He's like, whatever you want, man, and all this. And I'm like, okay. And I go out there and I was like, I've got to introduce Ric Flair. It's like, how do I do this? And I give him this big intro. And this is what I was told later. So he's about to come out and he's behind the curtain and he's going, oh, he knows his stuff, right? He's like, oh, yes, Steve knows his stuff. And then I ended up saying, how can I say that? I got right to the end and I says, perhaps the greatest of all time. Behind the curtain, apparently he went, perhaps, right? And then he came out and he gets to the back and he goes, you were doing so well up until perhaps. And I just cheered and I went, all right, the greatest of all time, Ric Flair. And he got a pop and stuff. That was awesome. And then later on the night when I introduced him, he got in and he said, I love you, man. And I was like, oh man, this is insane. But I went backstage after the Q&A. And it was like being in a Raw skit or a Nitro skit, like backstage. He was just in character. And I go in and I go, thank you, Mr. Flair. And I'm like, and he goes, oh, you did great out there. But listen, these ladies, they're really smitten with you. And I listen, it's like, this is mad. He's in character all the time. He is not a character. He is Ric Flair. And same with the Iron Sheik, when he was at 1PW and going over to him. And he's like, you are as good as Howard Finkel tonight. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And he's like, I want to give you something, Stevie. And he pulls out the picture. I'm going to sign this to Stevie. And he's got this, obviously, his 8x4s or whatever they are. I don't know. And he's signing it. And he's asking me how to spell Stevie. S-T-E-V-I. And he's, I think he got it right in the end. I should have done that out, actually. And then he went, it is a picture of me making Warrior humble. And it was just like, this is class. This is amazing. This is what I want. This is what bothers me now, though. I'm going to just rant here in just a second and just say very quickly, because I could go on about it all day. But I don't know why everyone's so boring now, Liam. All these new wrestlers. Like, they're not crazy. They're not out there. I don't want to see, like, people like Macho Man and Roddy Piper. And I just want to see them just on another planet go backstage and just, like, be really over the top. Not to be a prick to me or anything, but just to be just a bit more, they're all introvert now. It's boring.
Well, this has been fun. Do you know what? Maybe we should get you back on for a part 2. Do you know? Because this has been so much fun. I
don't know what else we could talk about, but I'll come up with something. A lot of it's a blur. I will say that. Look, when I go back and I think of the last 20 years, it really is. I don't know what happened in my 20s, and I will say this very quickly because I did want to say this. I was doing it for a while. Every week. 2 times a week, 3 times a week, which was pretty good at the time for a ring announcer in the UK, right? Not everybody's doing that. I don't know if anybody else was doing that, just up and down the country. Didn't mention SWA much there, so I apologize about that because that was a big part of what I was doing at the time. But there was a point when I'm doing these shows at like community centers and town halls and stuff, and they're drawing like 30 people and 50 people. And no offense to anyone that tours, I'm not knocking you. If you're doing it all the time, you're going to get, the bad draw every now and again. But these places that just, where these guys are just wrestling green guys and they're not willing to learn and they're doing it part-time and they're doing it for their own enjoyment and they're going like, running once every 2 months. And it's like, that really used to bring me down. It's like, why am I here on a Saturday night, in front of like 30 people? And I'm just saying the names. So I don't know how it gets to some wrestlers, particularly when there's old timers there and they're going out. And it's like, what are you getting out of this? I think you've really got to love wrestling for that, regardless of what they're getting paid, because it won't be as much as what they deserve. I remember someone saying to me once, it's like, you're getting paid more than some of the people on the show. And I'm like, well, maybe they should talk to the promoter about that, because that's not right to me, But I stopped doing a lot of those shows because I was like, I don't want to. I sound terrible for saying that because I sound like the glory hound who only wants to do 1PW and do these big events in arenas and stuff. But it's not like that. It's just like, what are you doing? My question would be to those people: what are you getting from that? And I get if you're new and you're looking for new places to work, but if you've been doing that over a number of years, and I do know people, I'm not going to say who because you won't know who they are anyway, that have been doing it 5-10 years in these small community centres, and that's all they do in front of nobody. And it's like, what? Why? What are you getting out of that? What are you doing wrong? Think about yourself. Think about what you're doing. There's too many people who want to be pro wrestlers. They've never looked in the mirror and asked themselves, should I be a pro wrestler? And that's what I did 20 years ago. And it made a big difference. And that's all I want to say about that.
Awesome. That's a great thing to end on. So before we do our outro, Stevie, is there anything you want to plug, my friend?
Not really. Inside the ropes, as I say, I love what you guys do. I love, I don't know if you call yourself an influencer, Liam. I love, the YouTubers and stuff, what they're doing. But there's too many of them, so I'm never going to do it. That's just my opinion. I wish you the best success, though. There's just could come to 1PW. We didn't talk about Steve. He's such a good guy. He really is trying his best. If he hurt anybody in the past, he believe me, he's such a good person at heart that I think he would want to make amends with them, even if they're not going to listen to him, if they're not going to talk to him, whatever the case may be. But I think you'll agree, Liam, that 1PW, based on these last 3 events, they are really good shows. People will enjoy them. Non-fans will enjoy them. The production's out of this world. When I seen that, their video wall, the 1PW Tron or whatever you want to call it, and you can nickname it, I'm sure you will. I was like, yeah, this is what it's all about. This is what I want to do. So keep supporting that. I want to give a shout out to New Generation Wrestling as well. That mean a lot to me, and really give me my love back for pro wrestling. That's going back like 10 years ago now, when I was getting sick of these nothing shows. But the Hull City Hall, they never get talked about online. You should review them because it's like they're so ignored. They had a TV show for a while. It was on the local channel. It's not at the moment, depending where you lived. I can't remember the name of that local channel. Was it Estuary or something? I think it was Estuary. But yeah, they've got an event coming up, 23rd of June. So that's a big one. That's one of the anniversary event. I can't remember what year they'll be up to now. I think it's a 15th anniversary event. Adam Maxted, great guy. He's their champion. They've got the Destiny Rumble at that event as well. And then, of course, 10th of June is the big one, Devil's Due, 1PW Devil's Due. There's a few promotions around here that I'm working with at the moment. There's wrestling in Newcastle, which is a good event. Good. They've done one event that was really great. Dean Allmark was on there. He's so underrated. Nobody ever talks about him. It was good, great. Like I say, wrestling, it's like a family. But yeah, like you get to catch up with people you haven't seen for years. So I'll give a shout out to Tim Strange, who I hadn't seen for years. He's a big guy and he's doing like a Stan Hansen sort of cowboy gimmick. And he's kind of legit as well because he went to America and he's got his cowboy hat made and everything. He's a good guy from Canada. Who else is there? I work for Avant-Garde Wrestling, also in Newcastle. Someone I'm going to forget and I'm going to get into trouble and I don't want to. But yeah, there's a few places I'm working at the moment, but support British wrestling to all the fans out there, even though I've dismissed some of it. I think we do appreciate the likes of yourselves, Liam, is what I would say, that we really do.
That's a problem.
On behalf of everyone else, I just want to give a shout out to Martin Bushby as well, because he used to have a podcast and he was the last person I spoke to about the things I'd done in wrestling going back a few years ago now. So hello, Martin. I know you're watching, and I'm sure there was other people I wanted to mention as well, but maybe we can do it again. And
yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely.
I know I've screwed up there.
That's fine. We'll definitely get you back in for a part 2. So yeah, as Stevie mentioned there, Devil's Due is out on June 10th. I will be there. I've got the all access, so I might see you backstage, possibly.
Possibly, yeah. I'm always busy during the events, but I might be messing around. Lizzie might get me in a full Nelson or something. I don't know, but you never know what might happen. Also on Fight TV, I mean the pay-per-view. I didn't see the last one, but I heard the production was tremendous. The people who are doing that, give a shout out to the people behind the scenes because they're making it happen right now. big time.
Absolutely. So don't forget, you can head to prowrestlingtees.com/effing wrestling. You can buy yourself a nice little t-shirt. We've got the All Effing Wrestling shirt, which was modeled by. Do you know who this is?
I can't tell because. Hang on. Who is it?
It's Natalia Markova.
Is it?
Yep.
How did you get her?
We've got eyes and ears. And also, you can get the Magic of Wrestling t-shirt, which is modeled by my good friend Dollywood right there.
Very good.
And if you like old school wrestling, head to prowrestlingtees.com/Adrian Adonis, which is going to be out.
Wow.
It's going to be out for Dark Side of the Ring. I cannot wait for that episode, to be honest.
Dark Side of the Ring, something else we could talk about. I mean, I don't know. Some of these episodes that are coming up, what I've heard about. Yeah.
Of course. But you can find all our social medias. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. We're absolutely ever here. So one last thing, obviously, to say from Stevie, thank you so much for obviously sharing so much. We've got through absolutely loads. And yeah, we'll get you back in for a part 2 because I'm sure you've got absolutely loads more to tell.
I'll have a think about it. I don't know. Stuff drift in and out of, like I say, these things are very therapeutic. It's been too long since I did this. So I do appreciate you approaching myself, and hopefully, you can talk about some of the things that I briefly touched on with Martin Stone, which I think will be an eye-opener. Yeah.
Absolutely. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one. Magic Man out.